Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to our webinar about best practices for spend management control and optimization. My name is Helmut. I am the host for today's webinar. And our presenter today is Konstantin Bredyuk, who is responsible for the product here at ApprovalMax. Konstantin brings a long year experience in business process management, and he will walk you through the topic today. Before we start our presentation, let's talk about some household stuff. First of all, we will record the session. So you will receive approximately 24 hours after the webinar an email with the link where you can watch it again, or you are welcome to share the link with your colleagues. And if you are getting any question during the webinar, do not hesitate to ask these questions straight away. For this purpose, you find in the Zoom control panel an icon which is called Q&A. So if you move your mouse through the Zoom window, you will see in the control area a button which is labeled Q&A. Please click this button, a small window is open up, and that is the place where you can post your questions. Before we start the presentation, 2 words about the company. ApprovalMax was founded in 2014, and the team has a long year and strong background in business process management and process excellence. What it means is it covers not only about technical experience, but also experience about how to organize processes, how to analyze the needs of an organization, and how to help organizations to set up efficient business processes. We are incorporated in the United Kingdom with operations from the UK and from Germany. We are proud that we recently has reached the Xero partner level of a recommended Xero partner. And we are also recently awarded as the App Partner of the Month. We are proud that we are meanwhile well established in the Xero ecosystems, and we are very happy to maintain strong partnerships with other players in the ecosystem like Data Molino, EasyBills, Receipt Bank, and others. Okay, that's it for the short introduction today. Let me hand over to Konstantin, who will walk you through the agenda and the following presentation.
Thanks a lot, Helmut, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. Let us take a look at the agenda. We will start with some definitions, like what we're talking about, what is spend management in our understanding, and then we'll go through some interesting topics like, for example, 5 signs of having spend management issues. And if at least one of the signs applies to your organization, then, well, the rest of the webinar might be quite useful for you. Then we'll go through some key components of a good spend management solution as we see it. And then we will basically split this perfect spend management solution in a couple of steps in a way that you could be moving from first step to the second step and then to the third step. Then, of course, we'll have a Q&A session, and let me encourage you to ask questions because it's a very, very useful part of the presentation, actually. Adding this or asking specific questions and maybe challenging us a little bit, and we're trying to answer those questions. So use this Q&A button, as Helmut mentioned. Would be really happy to answer, or at least try to answer, all the questions that are coming in. So let's get started. So first of all, defining spend management. We strongly believe that every organization performs spend management, even in such situations when they are not using this term spend management. if organization is paying for goods it orders, if it is paying for services it orders, or if it is, for example, allocating money to other organizations in the form of a donation, that is still spent. If organization is reimbursing employees for the expenses that they have done, that is also kind of a spend. So it is quite a broad thing, and we see that all organizations are doing spend management in this or other way. And the question basically is how structured, how controlled this process is. And here we see lots and lots of variations. It could be on a very, very basic level, and it could be on quite an advanced level. We'll get back to it a little bit later. Before that, let us talk about some goals that we see for spend management within the organization. They are quite basic and they sound like common sense, but well, they are easy to have on a slide. They are quite hard to have in practice. So let's go for them and let's then see how they can be achieved. The first one, only spend what you need to and when you need to. And we see that certain organizations are facing such situations when they realize, accounting team realizes that they have purchased some fancy TV for the meeting room, post factum, right? Once the TV is already in the room and it is installed and they receive an invoice and they just have to pay it, right? Supplier at least is expecting them to pay the invoice. And it's not quite a good situation from many perspectives, because probably that was not the purchase that we wanted to have in the organization, or maybe at least not right now. Maybe by the end of the year, it could be a good idea, but currently it's not a good idea at all. So that's the first goal. Make sure that we are spending only what we need to and when we need to. The second thing, the second goal is pay for what actually has been ordered. There is another quite typical, unfortunately, situation when accounting team is looking at the invoice, and the big question that they have is like, well, did we actually order that? Who did that? Who ordered that? And then they start chasing people in different departments trying to figure out, okay, who has ordered that? Did we actually order that? And that is causing quite some pain. So the second goal is only pay for what actually has been ordered. The third one is about setting some limits and making sure that these limits are not exceeded. It is, of course, very tightly linked to the budgeting thing. So these are the three goals as we see them. As I have mentioned, sounds like common sense, but yeah, not as easy to achieve in practice actually. Whom this presentation, this webinar is for? We see three main groups. First of all, it is for financial executives, chief financial officers, financial directors, VPs of finance, people who are in charge in general. The second big audience is accounting teams who are actually doing bills on the daily basis. They are taking care of payments. They are, well, chasing people within the company to get approvals for bills. So people who are doing it on a daily basis. And finally, we have financial services outsourcing organizations who are providing certain services to their clients, or it could be a shared financial center actually, and they also care a lot about spend management, as we see. So this is the target audience for the spend management and for our webinar. Another quite important thing to mention is for whom spend management topic is the most critical, as we see. First of all, it is for quickly growing organizations. We see, based on our experience, that organizations with a stable amount of employees, that is not too large, too huge, say 10, 15, spend management is not a hot topic for them. It is a topic, but it is not that hot. spend management is the hardest for those organizations that are starting to grow fast. Because for these organizations, old practices, all principles of handling spend management, they do not work anymore. And they're starting to look for something different, for something else that would address their growing needs for control and for scaling their operations. The second big audience and the second big topic is remotely operating teams. We see that spend management is more challenging for those organizations that have multiple offices, multiple locations, and they basically need to make sure that spend management works perfectly, not just in the head office, right, but across all their multiple locations. And we actually have lots of clients with more than 20, more than 30 entities in different cities, sometimes in different countries. And that is quite a challenge to make sure that all these entities, all these offices are working in the same way in terms of spend, that head office is controlling spend across all these different locations. The third item is about requiring multi-tiered spending authorizations. We see that certain organizations, they are really focused on having strict controls over the spend, and they are trying to set up multi-tiered authorizations, like authorization first by department manager, then maybe by chief financial officer, maybe sometimes even by chief executive officer. And once the company is trying to set up this multi-tiered spending authorization, they are likely running into some organizational issues. Say, for example, there is an organization that tries to have a multi-tiered workflow with 3 levels of authorizations, and they're trying to do it on paper, right? That is quite a challenging thing to do, and they're starting to look for some better solutions to cover that. And the last one is about organizations that need to be compliant with some external regulations that are getting some tough audits from time to time, and they just need to make sure that they are compliant with these external regulations. 5 signs of having spend management issues. That is quite an important piece to go through. We see that there are some typical problems, typical situations that organizations are running into, and that there are signs of a problematic situation in the organization. So we have listed 5 of them. Actually, we have like 20 in mind, but anyway, we have narrowed down to just 5 signs that you can just go through and check if your organization potentially might have the issue with spend management. The first one is that spendings authorization is done in a reactive mode. So basically you are receiving an invoice, an accounting team, and you are asked to pay it, right? And in the worst scenario, actually the money has already been paid, and you are in a situation when, okay, you have ordered something, at least it looks out, so then you have actually spent the money, and now you're trying to figure out what has happened, right? So that is quite a bit situation. Of course, the situation where you realize that you have already spent the money, but actually also the situation when you realize that you already have to pay to the supplier without knowing beforehand that goods have been ordered. That's the first big sign. The second sign is about lack of documentation of the process. It is especially important for these organizations with multiple locations, multiple offices across the country or across the globe, because they are starting to reinvent some kind of spend management process, and they are setting up their own rules in terms of who should be authorizing what. And even if you are agreeing on some rules with these offices, with these locations, they are often starting to forget about them, ignore them, and do spend in the way they want to do it. It is, in many cases, because of lack of proper documentation of the process and the lack of proper automation of this spend management process. So that is the second side. The third one is about tracking approvals on paper or in Excel files. or even authorization by email is not the best idea. We are dealing with lots and lots of clients that are trying to switch from paper to some kind of an automation software exactly because of running into these issues with paper. Paper is not efficient at all. You just need to, in this case, to run across the office and get signatures on the paper, and very, very quickly it turns into a nightmare. Even having purchase order forms in Excel is also a solution that becomes not efficient after you hit a certain threshold in the organization, headcount-wise, right? The fourth point is about matching of bills to purchase orders. If it is taking too long, if it is taking quite some time to find a purchase order and find a person who has originated the purchase, then it is actually a pretty good sign that something is going wrong in the spend management organization. We'll talk about how to deal with it a little bit later. Before that, let me mention the last one. We have found the following pretty clear sign about having some problems in spend management. We see that if lots and lots of expenses are coded with some kind of general expenses or something like other expenses, or it could be G&A sometimes, then something is wrong. Because basically this means that purchase orders or bills and purchase orders and bills are not properly coded with accounts, with tracking categories in case of zero, with classes in terms, in case we're talking about QuickBooks Online. And this means that some pretty good analytics cannot be done, because you can just, cannot do analytics in terms of predicting your spend next month, next quarter, next year, etc. So in case your general expenses are exceeding certain threshold, say 20-25%, then very likely something might be going wrong with the spend management in your organization. Well, let me make a short stop at this point. We have actually prepared a short poll for you, and we would like to get some input from you. And actually, I can even adjust our presentation today based on the results of the poll. So let me hand over to Helmut, who will launch this poll, and then we'll move forward with the slides.
Yeah. Okay, so we have launched a poll, and we would like to ask you to let us know about your spend management priorities. So what is important for your organization, or if you are an accountant or bookkeeper, for your client's organization, in terms of spend management, what you would be interested in?
Okay, thanks a lot, Helmut, and you're very welcome to start voting using this poll. That would be helpful for us. That could be insightful for you, because of course we will share the information about this poll anonymously. And let's move forward meanwhile. The next topic that would like to cover is companies of a good spend management. It does not necessarily mean that all these companies should be in place from the day one, but this is something that we keep as a long-term goal in mind for our clients. We want our clients to be successful and happy about their spend management, of course. There are 5 companies. The first one is having a proper purchasing process. It means having some controls over what is being purchased. And that is very important to have some restrictions for requesters in terms of what they should be able to select when they are raising a purchase order. Say, for example, should they be able to create new suppliers? Should they be able to select any account, or maybe only particular accounts? Should they be able to select any tracking category, if we're talking about zero? Or should they be able to select any class, in case we're talking about QuickBooks Online, when they are raising a purchase order? And there are lots and lots of ways to, on the one hand, control the requisitioning process, on the other hand, to help requesters. Because, well, requesters are actually not a big fans of being lost when they're writing purchase orders. And in case they see a long list of GL codes, they are often quite confused. So if we are restricting the list of GL codes for them, on the one hand, we are making the overall process under control. And on the other hand, we're actually helping requesters. So that is quite an important one. The second one is about control over budgets and supplier spend limits. Of course, it's a very good idea and a best practice in our understanding to have budgets and to have some, at least, insight into what we are spending with each particular supplier, and ideally having some limits for a supplier for a quarter, for half a year, maybe for a year. That is quite a good practice. By the way, budgets are not necessarily needs to be done in a classical way with a list of accounts and months. It could be done using purchase orders. That is a topic that we can talk about a little bit later, how you can use a purchase order as a kind of a budget. The third topic is about X-way matching of bills to purchase orders to information about receiving goods. The basic matching is two-way matching, bill to a purchase order. This way you can control that bill that you have received and that you are going to pay is related to a particular purchase order that has been raised beforehand. That is a two-way matching. Then it could be coming to a three-way matching when you're also matching this information to the information about goods being received. So you have, first of all, order of the good, then you have confirmation of the delivery, and then you have an invoice. That is a three-way matching. There is actually even a four-way matching, but yeah, let's skip it for now. The fourth component of a good spend management is control of payments. That is a separate process, as you know, from bills. So first of all, you're getting bills authorized. Then you have a number of bills, say 20, 50, etc. And well, that is a good idea to have control over these payments themselves separately from bill approval. The last thing to mention here is about having proper spend coding and analytics. That is, of course, a very good idea to have proper coding on each bill and purchase order, because this way you can control the budget, how it is being executed, and then you can actually predict your spendings for the next month, for the next quarter, for the next half a year. So that is a very good point, very good idea to have proper coding in order to enable proper analytics. Well, I think we need to take a look at the results of the poll. I hope everyone had a chance to post their vote in the poll. And that would be really interesting to see what results did we get.
Okay, so we have ended the poll, and it looks like that we have a winner. And the leading category is matching of bills to purchase orders in an X-way match, followed by purchase order control and bill control. Thank you very much for voting, and we will, of course, share the results.
Great, thanks a lot, Helmut. Actually, the results are quite interesting, and they are actually correlating with what we have in mind based on our conversations with clients. We see that exactly this matching of bills to purchase orders is becoming more and more interesting. We will talk about that actually in just a couple of slides. So yeah, let's keep moving forward to the matching piece. So these were the key components of a good spend management. But of course, we are trying to be realistic. We are not saying that, okay, each and every organization should have all these companies from the day one. It is not quite realistic, right? We are on the side of a step-by-step approach. Start with minimum and then move forward to next steps. What is the minimum in our understanding? The first priority and the bare minimum, as we're calling it, is to have control over bills, basically. That the organization is paying for what you need and when you need it. This basically means that there should be a proper authorization process for bills that covers specifics of your organization. Let me bring an example. Some organizations that we're dealing with, they are having a departmental structure, and goods are basically ordered for one of the particular departments. And this is quite a good idea to make sure that bills related to a particular department are authorized by someone from this department. It could be head of the department, it could be one of the employees who is in charge of purchases for the department, but it should be someone from this department, right? And of course, it should be done in an automated way, meaning that it's not the accounting team who should be chasing these department managers across the company, right? It should be a solution that makes sure that department managers or someone in the department authorizes the bill. They are happy about the delivery. They don't have any questions. And it is done in a way that accounting team is not spending lots and lots of time to get their decision, right? And of course, multiple things are checked in the bill. It is correctness of the bill, amounts, quantities, that the bill approval could be used as a delivery confirmation, right? It is not an ideal solution like you would read in the books where you would have a separate process for receiving, but we see that lots and lots of organizations are using bill approval as a confirmation of delivery. And we see that, well, it works for them. It's a pretty good idea to have delivery confirmation incorporated into the bill approval process, right? And as you're guessing, this bill control is just the first step, because it is not ideal. First of all, if you're taking care only of bill authorization, it means that the company is generally reactive, right? Once the bill is received by the organization, then accounting team is starting to chase people to get their approvals, etc. Even though if it's done in automated way, anyway, the bill is already here. It means that likely goods have been delivered. And it likely means that if something is going wrong, I mean, if you don't want to pay this invoice, then it basically means that you need to have some discussions with the supplier saying that, well, we cannot pay this bill because of something, right? You are reactive in this situation. You are looking at a document that is just saying that you need to pay. Something has already happened and you need to react on this thing, thing happening. Also, it means that you lack some information that is quite important, because bill received from the supplier doesn't cover quite important information about tracking. On the bill, you won't find information like, in most cases, right, to which particular project this bill is related to, right? Because a supplier, in most cases, has no clue what you are buying this for. And you're looking at the invoice and you need to figure out, like, okay, what is it for? Is it for this project or for that project? Is it for this department or for another department? And that could be quite different if you have a purchase order before that. We'll move that on the next slide, actually. And yeah, then you'll be running into some issues with cash flow prognosis, because once again, it is a reactive process. You know about an invoice once you receive an invoice. Ideally, you would know some time ahead that you will have some financial responsibilities later in the month. Actually, that is driving us to the next slide, because the next slide is showing us the purchase order process, the purchase order approach. It is a more advanced scenario because it basically allows to be more proactive and authorize the purchase order before the invoice is received. Basically, you're authorizing the purchase order before something is ordered. And it works typically the following way. You have a purchase order formal process where requesters, employees in the organization, can request to purchase something. And before this purchase order is actually sent to the supplier, it is going through some authorizations. It could be authorization by head of the department. It could be authorization by head of the region, if it's an organization with region-based structure. It could be an authorization by chief financial officer for some purchase orders. It could be authorization by some of the top managers. The purchase order process basically should incorporate these rules that you want to have in the organization for purchase order authorizations. It is quite a good idea to have a multi-step authorization workflow. The way that first purchase order is kind of pre-approved by, say, head of the department. Then it is authorized by, say, chief financial officer. And then, only for certain purchase orders, of course, authorization of chief executive officer is required. And of course, it's a good idea, it's a best practice to have some automatic rules that would define who should be taking care of different purchase orders based on the details of the purchase order. Purchase order captures lots of details about the spending itself, like what we're buying this money, buying these goods for, or what we are purchasing these services for, supplier details. Coding is quite an important part of the purchase order. Basically, this way, you know beforehand what invoices are going to hit you in a couple of weeks or months. It depends, right? Because you already have this information. And many organizations that we are dealing with, they have a practice of properly coding purchase orders right away with GL codes, with tracking categories, or if we're talking about QuickBooks Online, with classes, right? Because in this case, they know beforehand what they are spending money for, and it is not a big surprise when they receive an invoice later on. As you're guessing, using purchase orders also is not a solution that solves all the problems itself, right? Because there are also some challenges with that. Let us go for them. For small organizations, it is perfectly okay to have employees going to the accounting software, raising a purchase order, and sending it to the supplier. By small companies, I mean the organization with, say, 5, maybe 7, maybe 10 employees. The problem is that once the organization is starting to exceed certain threshold in terms of the headcount, this approach is facing certain quite serious issues. First of all these employees who are raising purchase orders, they need to have access to the accounting software. This means that they have access to lots of information, to be honest, right? In most cases, it means that they can create new suppliers. They can see purchase orders raised by other departments. They can actually authorize some purchase orders raised by other departments. So overall, we see that for organizations that are not very small ones, let me put it this way, having a very traditional purchase order process with people going to the accounting software is not quite a good idea. And yeah, actually this also means that if requesters are going to the accounting software, they won't have spending limits. They will be able to select any account. They will be able to select any supplier. They will be able to create new suppliers. Lots and lots of problems are coming with that. We see that a best practice here is to basically have purchasing outside of the accounting software in a way that it just connects to the accounting software on a technical level, exchanging some data, but people who are using these two systems should be separated. Accountants and, of course, chief financial officer, chief executive officer, those people who need to have access to all the accounting information, they work in the accounting system. But all those people who just need to raise a purchase order, submit it for approval, and finally get goods delivered, they actually do not need to have access to the accounting software. It is perfectly fine for them to work outside of the accounting tool, just raise a purchase order, and then confirm that the goods have been delivered. And with a separate purchasing solution, it is possible to have some additional restrictions, as we have discussed. Have some restrictions in terms of supplier selection, in terms of spending limits, and of course in terms of authorization. So if you're using a separate purchasing software, it means that you can be sure that certain purchase orders will not be sent to a supplier without a proper authorization, right? And finally, we are switching to this matching thing. And I can confirm that based on all our discussions with our clients, exactly matching is one of the hottest topics in the spend management control. They are going typically through this life cycle from bills authorization, then to purchase orders authorization, and then finally they're saying, okay, that makes perfect sense to link bills to purchase orders. That is exactly what we see happening with our clients. Just to reiterate, what is a two-way matching? When you receive a bill, you set a link of this bill, from this bill to the purchase order, and basically saying that this bill is related to the purchase order. What it gives you? First of all, it is giving a clarity in terms of the approval of the bill process. Because if the purchase has been previously pre-approved, pre-authorized, it means that checking of the bill becomes a pretty, a formal process. I mean, you are not checking the business purpose of this purchase, right? Because it is already confirmed by the purchase order. You are just checking that the bill itself is correct for the correct amount without any issues on the bill itself, right? And if you're matching bills to purchase orders, you are getting an ability to have some financial prognosis to see, for example, what liabilities, financial liabilities you are going to have next month. Because with a purchase order, you have a very clear schedule, right? This month you have ordered for 100,000, next month you have ordered for 200,000. And when bills are coming in, you are basically reducing the amount of the purchase order by the amount of the bill. And you can check the purchase order balance. Basically, how much do you have left from a particular purchase order? And that is quite helpful in terms of seeing your upcoming financial results. Say, for example, you had a purchase order for 10,000, then you have received 5 invoices, 1,000 each. If the matching is properly done, then you can say, well, it looks like for this particular purchase order, we will have 5 more thousand to pay, right? That is why it is very important to do this matching thing. And finally, you can actually check those purchase orders that are fully billed and those purchase orders that are not yet fully billed. And I'm glad Jira has a pretty nice feature of marking purchase orders as fully billed. And by clicking this button, you're basically closing the purchase order. And then you can deal only with outstanding purchase orders, with those that are not yet fully billed. And that's how this process looks like in ApprovalMax. We support this workflow with purchase order authorization, bill authorization, and matching of bills to purchase orders. That's how it looks like in ApprovalMax. On the top line here, you see the purchase order process. First of all, the purchase order is created in ApprovalMax, and it means that those people who are raising purchase orders, they don't need to have access to the accounting software at all. Purchase order is going through a multi-step authorization process with some rules applied, ApprovalMax will route purchase orders to different people based on different criteria, like based on the supplier that has been selected, based on the amount of the purchase order, based on GL codes, etc. Once the purchase order is fully approved, fully authorized, it is sent to the supplier and created in Jira. That is the end of the purchase order process. Then, in a couple of days, maybe in a couple of weeks, it depends, a bill is coming in, supplier invoice in other terms. It is often first going to so-called OCR tools, like Receipt Bank, Data Malina, Easy Bills, by the way, is a nice Australian tool. And these tools are extracting data from the invoice and pushing this to Jira. Then it is time for the bill to be authorized in Jira. ApprovalMax is picking it up and sending to approvers within the organization. What is important here? That approvers, they don't need to have access to the accounting software at all. The same way as requesters who are raising purchase orders also don't need to have access to the accounting software. It basically means that everything that is not directly related to the financial part is not visible outside of the accounting. Those things that are not directly related to the finance are happening outside of the accounting software. Requesters of purchase orders, approvers of purchase orders and bills, they work outside of the accounting system. And at this point, matching is done. At this point, you can set a link in ApprovalMax saying that this particular bill is related to that particular purchase order. And you can actually set multiple links. So for example, you could have one purchase order with 5 bills matched to this purchase order. And ApprovalMax will do this additional math, like it will check if total amount of bills exceeds amount of the purchase order, what is the balance of the purchase order, basically what do we have left to be paid in regards to this purchase order and such. So yeah, that's how it looks like in ApprovalMax. We do have some additional advanced topics for our webinar today, and I have them in a special slides prepared for our discussion. But before that, let me ask if there are any questions that you would like to ask in regards to spending in general, in regards to ApprovalMax solution, regarding anything. You're very welcome to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Konstantin. And indeed, we have received the first questions. So when we are going to include budget limits in ApprovalMax is the first question we have received.
Well, that is a very good topic. Let me try to make the answer reasonably short. So first of all, we see that lots and lots of our clients that are using ApprovalMax, they want to make this one step forward and include budgeting capabilities. And we do have a feature that is called budget check that allows to import a budget from Jira and check bills and purchase orders against this budget. So this budget from Jira looks in a, it's a pretty classic budget, let me put it this way. You have accounts, you have months, and then you have some planned expense in a particular month for a particular account. So this budget is uploaded to ApprovalMax, and ApprovalMax will be checking bills and purchase orders against this budget. That is first part of the story. Actually, we see that many of our clients, they are doing budgeting a little bit differently. They are not going after these classic budgets with accounts and months. They are using purchase orders for budgeting. That is actually one of the advanced topics that I wanted to cover today. They are doing it in the following way. That is a pretty good one, actually. They are raising a purchase order for, say, 100,000 with a particular supplier, but they do not send it to supplier, actually. They are just using this purchase order as a budget, and they have a rule that each bill should be matched with a purchase order. Otherwise, it shouldn't be approved at all. and they basically have these purchase orders playing the role of the budget for different suppliers, and then linking bills to these purchase orders, having the calculation of purchase order balance, which actually means budget left in this case, right? And that is on the one hand pretty good control of the spendings. On the other hand, it is also a pretty good way to predict what liabilities are going to hit us a little bit later. So yeah, I was trying to make it short. So just to reiterate, budget is a very big and important topic for us. We do have a budget checker feature currently in testing mode. Would be happy to switch it on for you. And also, yeah, keep in mind this opportunity to use purchase orders as budget, used by lots of clients, and they are finding it pretty helpful. Thanks a lot for asking this good question.
Yes, thank you for the answer, Konstantin. The next question is actually challenging a little bit what you have said, and it is asking if the organization has clearly defined budgets for spending on a departmental level. Does it dilute the usefulness of POs at all? So do I need POs if I have well-defined budgets?
Well, it depends. To be honest, I'm not in the position to be 100% sure about all the specific situations, right? I'm not an accountant myself, right? So that is kind of a disclaimer. I can just share what I have seen as a practice for many clients that are using ApprovalMax and not using ApprovalMax. And we see that, of course, this purchase order as a budget thing, it is mostly useful when you have these budgets based on the supplier, right? If you are having budgets based on the department, right, that is your way of doing things, then I would say that using this budget checker with budgets prepared in Jira would be more useful. And actually in Jira, you can define budget based on a particular tracking category. So you can say, for example, that we have a tracking category called department. Then we have, say, marketing and sales as departments. And then you're saying that we define a budget for the marketing department, right? Then you upload this budget to ApprovalMax, and ApprovalMax will be checking not just account and the month, but it will be also checking the department. So say, for example, you receive a bill that is coded with marketing department. It is coded with advertising account, and it is for August, right? ApprovalMax will check all these parameters, and it will say that, well, looks like this particular bill is affecting this marketing budget. But if the very same bill would be coded with another tracking category, with sales, by the way, then it will not trigger this message about the budget. So yeah, to summarize my answer, if you're doing budgeting specifically for departments, then yeah, I agree. Using purchase orders maybe is not the best fit solution. That would be logical to take a look at this import of budgets from Jira and having separate budget files for different departments. This might work. Hopefully I have answered the question.
Yes, thank you very much, Konstantin. So let me reiterate, if you are interested on testing this budgeting functionality, please send an email to support@approvalmax.com and request that we are activating this feature. And it will be seeing in general availability later this year. The next question, Konstantin, is about Xero expenses, a very hot topic, I know, but the question is when to expect it.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, thanks a lot for asking. Good question. So yeah, let me bring you some additional details about this expenses topic. So yeah, it is quite hot, not just for us, but for Jira as well. And yeah, as a short background, Jira had expense claims functionality previously. Then they have released this new expenses functionality. And even 1 year before the release, when there were just rumors about this functionality, we already started receiving questions about, well, will you guys support approvals of expenses? Because of course, most of the organizations, they don't want employees to just submit the expense. They want each expense to go through an authorization process with at least department manager, maybe a project manager, maybe someone else looking at the expense and saying that, well, that is a good expense. Employee should be reimbursed for that. And another nuance to mention here is that in order for us to integrate with Jira, there is one important thing to be done on the Jira side. If you see something in Jira's interface, it actually doesn't necessarily mean that we can integrate with this thing, unfortunately. In order to enable that, Jira has to release so-called API thing. They basically need to open the opportunity for add-ons to integrate with the solution and to pick up the data, to push the data, etc. This API thing is not there yet. So technically, we just cannot integrate with Jira new expenses at this point. The next big topic that we are discussing with our clients is what should be the scope of this integration and how should it look like. And our current understanding is that we can just add approvals for expenses pretty much in the same way as we have added approvals for bills. That is our current design. That is how we have defined the workflow. And well, to be honest, we have design ready, we have some specification ready, and this solution can be implemented on our side. But back to the second topic that I have mentioned, we just technically cannot do that unless Jira opens the API to integrate with this new expenses model. That was quite a long answer. I hope you're not bored with such details. But yeah, that's the full story. It's quite a big topic for us, and lots and lots more nuances to share here. But hopefully, I was answering the core part of the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Konstantin. So the next question we have is about the search option for POs and bills in ApprovalMax.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking this one. We know that there is actually a certain gap in ApprovalMax, and it is related to searching bills and purchase orders based on the reference of the bill, based on the number of the purchase order. That is something that is sitting on top of our backlog for quite some time, to be honest. And sorry about some delays with delivering this feature. And we are making some adjustments to the core part of our product to make it really efficient. And well, the worst thing that might be happening that we want to avoid is that it will be breaking some of the current workflows, that it could be slowing down things, it could be making it less efficient. That we don't want to have at all. So that's why we're spending some additional time and making sure that the solution will be 100% efficient, fast, and answering the questions that we are getting from our clients. So search is coming 100%. I cannot commit to a specific due date, delivery date right now. Some things are still in progress, but we'll keep you informed. Subscribe to our newsletter, and you will be the first to know about release of the search functionality. Thanks a lot for asking the question.
Good, Konstantin, thank you very much. And I think you have one more slide for us today, which I think let's pull it up, and then we are already running out of time.
Yep, I think we actually have already touched at least one of the topics mentioned on this slide. The slide is about some advanced spend management capabilities that we see some of our clients implementing in their organization. The first one is using this purchase orders as budgets, basically. And as I have mentioned during when I was answering one of the questions, it is mostly applicable for the case when you want to set some budgets for suppliers. Like, for example, for this supplier in this quarter, we should not be spending more than 100,000. It could make perfect sense if you're using one supplier for a certain class of goods and services, let me put it this way. And then you just set this budget, and then each bill linked to the purchase order indicates that part of this budget has been consumed. So that's how purchase orders can be used. I would say not in an absolutely traditional way, with purchase orders being actually sent to the supplier. The second quite important thing is about splitting of bills to multiple purchase orders. This could be happening, and actually ApprovalMax supports. You can match either multiple bills to the single purchase order, or multiple or one bill to multiple purchase orders. Both these options are possible, and we see that both situations are happening. Let me bring an example. Say you have sent multiple purchase orders to the same supplier, and then supplier is sending you just one invoice for all the purchase orders, right? This could be happening from time to time. It is quite a real situation. Another situation that could be happening is that you send a purchase order, and then supplier is saying, well, looks like we cannot deliver all these 1,000 chairs. Let us deliver 500 first, and then we'll deliver the rest of the chairs later. And then they send a bill that covers just part of the purchase order, right? And then, of course, you have a need to have multiple bills linked to the same purchase order. This is supported in ApprovalMax, and actually we are now making some steps forward, and we're making it more visual and intuitive. So yeah, subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll see some additions to this feature coming soon. And yeah, that is quite an important thing, to have some advanced reporting, and especially using this matching feature, matching of bills to purchase orders. One of the most useful reports is the purchase order balance report, where ApprovalMax calculates the difference of the original purchase order versus all the bills received related to this purchase order. And you will see that, say, for example, for this purchase order, we have 5,000 left, or 3,000 left, or such. So that is quite an important thing that is a part of spend management tool. Well, I think we have covered all the basic things, and of course we have lots and lots of other experience, and we could be talking for hours about this spend management topic. We have lots and lots of clients using this functionality in ApprovalMax, and we have lots of case studies and best practices of how this could be done, and actually not that good practices of how this should not be done. But we are quite limited on time, and we are almost for 1 hour in this webinar, and I really appreciate joining the webinar. I really hope it was useful and helpful, and let me thank you all for joining the webinar, and let me wish you a good afternoon and in the evening. Thanks a lot for joining.
Yes, thank you very much, Konstantin, for the great presentation. And also from my side, thank you for joining the webinar, and all the best. If you have any question, you can email us at any time at support@approvalmax.com. So we are happy to assist you or to answer any question you may have. Or if you want to see a sneak peek of the product and how to implement what Konstantin has talked today in the product, feel free to join one of our product demos, which is normally run at 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time every Thursday. Thank you very much for joining the webinar today, and I wish you a great evening, great afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.